team's speakers are here with us. So again, a warm welcome to all our speakers today. My name is Carsten Ovens. I'm the Executive Director of the European Leadership Network in Germany, and I will guide you through the next approximately 2 hours of the very first German-Israeli Green Hydrogen Forum. And first of all, it's my pleasure to announce our President, Hans-Thomas Kessler, Chairman of ELNET in Germany, for some welcoming remarks. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carsten. And thank you to everybody for joining this forum. We are really pleased about the opportunity to host that forum with regard to a topic which is really important for both Germany and Israel, and which has attracted a lot of attention over the last 18 months, 2 years. We will discuss today the possibilities of a cooperation between Germany and Israel in the hydrogen area. And the European Union, or the European Commission, has actually set the framework by launching a European hydrogen strategy, which provides for 3 phases and is an ambitious strategy and plan to foster hydrogen and make hydrogen to a major component of the European energy mix. The German government has embedded in the European strategy also launched a German hydrogen initiative, which provides inter alia for firstly quite sizable investments into the industry and into the area. Secondly, promoting hydrogen-related technologies, and there we touch upon the possibilities of 2 high-tech industries and countries, Germany and Israel. And thirdly, that is also important. I think that is particularly important, perhaps in our discussions today. It is also very apparent from a European perspective that we, or at least from a German perspective, we will not be able to produce the hydrogen that is required, and that we will depend from a European perspective heavily on imports. And that is why it is also provided for that we want to increase, as Europeans and as Germans, the cooperation with neighboring countries, which includes Israel and North Africa generally. And we are looking forward now to welcoming all the speakers, everybody listening and participating to this forum, and to interesting and inspiring conversations and discussions about that topic. I would like to hand over again to Carsten. Again, let me thank you for participating and supporting this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for your introductory remarks and supporting this very important initiative today. So the very first German-Israeli Green Hydrogen Forum is part of an initiative ELNET established end of last year, which is called the German-Israeli Network of Startups and Mittelstand, or in short, GINSUM. GINSUM is fully funded by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. And this initiative connects, indeed, Mittelstand, so SME companies from Germany, and startups from Israel. And in order to do that, we are very proud to have the support of so many stakeholders, also from parliaments and governments. And that's why we decided to start today's forum with 2 keynotes from those individuals who are indeed, well, you may call them Mr. Green Hydrogen of their respective countries. So it's now my pleasure and my honor at the same time to introduce Dr. Stefan Kaufman, member of the German Bundestag and the Innovation Commissioner for Green Hydrogen at the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, who will give the first keynote on behalf of the German government. And he will be followed by a second keynote of Dr. Gideon Friedman, the acting chief scientist of the Israeli Ministry of Energy. Stefan, without further ado, an honor to have you with us, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. At first, dear Mr. Kessler, dear Carsten, ladies and gentlemen, the future of the global energy industry is green. Despite all the human and economic challenges which COVID-19 has posed, we must not forget that climate change will remain the central global challenge of the coming decades. The switch to renewable energy is the key here. We can only achieve our climate goals if we make fundamental changes in our energy system and move towards renewable energy. And green hydrogen from renewable sources of energy will play a key role. It's really a game changer. Driving the expansion of wind power and photovoltaics can only be a first step. We need solutions for strengthening renewables also in sectors that are difficult or even impossible to electrify. Industrial production or international aviation and shipping come to mind, for instance. Moreover, many countries will continue to rely on imports from other countries to meet their energy demand. Germany is one of the countries that will most likely continue to rely on energy imports. However, we will want to import energy from renewable sources at a large scale. Green hydrogen has the potential to do just that and provides very good opportunity for collaboration between our two countries, Germany and Israel. And there is a lot of very good cooperation, especially in the field of research and innovation so far. Climate technologies made in Germany are global market leaders. We want to expand this leadership position by implementing joint international projects that send a clear message, namely that the time for green hydrogen has come. For renewable hydrogen to be competitive, we need to accelerate and expand the transfer of lab technologies to industrial application. We need to implement reference projects at sites of potential deployment in order to minimize technological and thus economic risks along the entire value chain of hydrogen. I would just like to mention the extreme stress conditions caused by very high temperatures, strong temperature variations, dust or salt water. We need robust, economically viable and sustainable products for electrolysis, desalination, and the generation and distribution of electricity. This can only be achieved through large-scale international cooperation that starts with research, development, and innovation. Furthermore, we expect that Germany will have to import large parts of its demand for hydrogen, which the National Hydrogen Strategy envisages for 2030. This highlights the necessity for us to start forging reliable supply relationships today. The federal government's economic stimulus package earmarks around 2 billion euros for establishing international hydrogen partnerships. And we are currently talking to countries in Africa, Namibia, especially South Africa, and also Australia, among a lot of others. In Germany, scientists and businesses have made great advancements in the climate-friendly production also of synthetic power-to-X fuels. They have achieved important breakthroughs, also thanks to the support of the Federal Research Ministry for such pioneering projects as Carbon2Chem. Cooperation between our two countries on the industrial production of synthetic fuels could provide important fresh impetus in this field. This field that is so highly relevant to climate change mitigation. And what is more, global demand may well develop much faster than we are currently assuming. Just 2 weeks ago, the German federal government adopted a bill that will introduce a binding quota for synthetic jet fuels in aviation as of 2026. A minimum quota of 2% will apply as of 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the unique opportunity right now to work together with our international partners to actively shape a key market of the future. But we should not only rely on policymakers to do the job. We need collaboration between all relevant stakeholders from science, from industry, also small and medium-sized companies, civil society, and politics alike. We can only develop the cloud needed in the face of international competition if we all work together. This is why events like today's discussions are so valuable. We need in-depth exchanges between investors and innovators, as well as between decision makers in politics and industry. We will only succeed in kicking off the hydrogen economy if we work together. A first meeting took place for the German-Israeli hydrogen cooperation in September 2020. It was named E-Meeting on Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in cooperation with the Israel Innovation Authority, the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, the Israel Prime Minister Office, and the Ministry of Energy and the MAFAD. And that was the first step, and I think we will have a much more other steps. And I hope on this note to end by saying that I very much look forward to our discussion today to build up on a very close cooperation between Germany and Israel, also in the field of hydrogen and green hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Toda rabba. Thank you very much, Stefan, for your introductory remarks, your keynote. And indeed, so when we could actually contribute with this today's first German-Israeli Green Hydrogen Forum organized by ELNET, it's going to be our pleasure, and for sure it's not going to be the last event on this series. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to our second keynote speaker, Dr. Gideon Friedman, the acting chief scientist of the Israeli Ministry of Energy. Dr. Friedman, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Would it be possible for me to share screen, or is it complicated?
And try, it should work.
Yes, okay, excellent, thank you. So first of all, thank you everyone for joining us in this collaborative endeavor. We sure hope to be able to collaborate on this and hydrogen and potentially other issues. I will start briefly on a sort of an overview of the situation in terms of renewable energy in Israel. I will go very quickly over a few slides, and then I will talk a little bit about hydrogen and the perspective, the Israeli perspective on hydrogen, which I think is a little different than Germany, which actually is a good thing, I think, because the collaboration is potentially more complementary. First of all, if we look at the CO2 emissions of Israel, we can see that it's a little different than the average world emissions. We have a larger electricity emissions component, and taking electricity and transport together takes more than 3/4 actually of the emissions in Israel, which makes in some sense our life easier because we can concentrate on these two areas in order to improve to reduce the emissions. In terms of renewable energy, just to show you that we are moving forward in the penetration of renewables, maybe not as quickly as we would have liked, but certainly the goals are there, and we will make every effort to reach the targets. For 2020, the target was 10%, and for 2030, it is currently 30%. We have not met our targets for 2020. We are a little behind what we hope to close the gap within a year or two. Just very briefly, we have an assortment of means to achieve our renewable goal. It's mostly or almost exclusively PV, but the PV is both ground-mounted and rooftop-mounted and dual use, what we call dual use above water reservoirs, or potentially in the future also agriculture. In terms of our achievements so far, we have certainly in the last 5 years reduced our pollution quite a bit. NOxes and particles by about 50%. The blue graph shows the situation in 2014, and in the percentage-wise, the orange one is 2019, and we expect to have the green one by 2030 or so. We've also made some progress on the CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour. Israel is a growing country, so in this slide I showed it as a fraction per kilowatt hour. Certainly there's been change in the last few years. The government has now decided on a goal of 30% renewables. We are pushing very strongly to dual use of land because Israel is small. There is not much land available here. The cost of renewable energy here in Israel is not so high, and we are leading the world in some aspects, certainly on the PV plus storage. The prices achieved here in the recent bid rounds in 2020 are amongst the lowest in the world. So we are, in terms of solar energy, quite in a good starting point, and we expect to continue in this way. Now I'll go a little bit more deeply into hydrogen. First of all, I want to show the hydrogen cycle, okay? The generation of hydrogen, the green hydrogen form, refers to the generation of hydrogen. It's one component. Then the second component in the cycle is the storage of the hydrogen. And the third component is the generation of electricity back from the storage by hydrogen. So all these components in the hydrogen cycle are important, and they are still not in commercial status, or let's say in a low cost commercial status. What are the main challenges for the hydrogen industry? Certainly the costs, like I mentioned, the costs are high. So we know how to do everything, but not well enough. The second thing, if we look in general, the one difficult thing is the logistics of hydrogen, how to transfer it from one location to another, because the energy generation location may not be the energy use location. So the logistics are quite difficult for hydrogen. And the second important point, which is difficult and a big challenge, is the efficiency. The overall cycle today works at efficiency, which is about a third. So the input energy becomes a third of the energy when we produce the electricity again at the end. This is a key point which must be solved if we want to be able to use hydrogen in the future in large amounts. A few special considerations for Israel which dictate, in my view, our policy. One is we are a small economy, so we are not aiming to become a major player in the hydrogen industry. We, however, want to be a player in the technology field. Israel is a small country, so for us, for example, travel distances are small, number of people is overall not very large. All of these considerations must be taken into account in terms of our policy. We have a small industrial sector, like I showed before. We have quite large natural gas reserves, and I will refer to this later. And we only have solar, essentially, only solar as the main renewable source, which is actually a problem. It means making our life more difficult. Luckily, it's solar, because solar is one of the cheapest ones and the most reliable ones, let's say. And we have an ecosystem of innovation which pushes us toward the technology. So I think in terms of the hydrogen technology, our first and foremost policy would be to invest in R&D. We want to be technology leaders. We want to play the technology game to lead the world in the technologies in areas of excellence that we have. We want to be in the hydrogen game as players. We will try everything. We want to have all the standards and all the regulation in place to use hydrogen. But at first, as long as this is not economical, we will play this in a small scale. The natural gas reserves makes us think about blue hydrogen. It's not green hydrogen, but potentially if we can create hydrogen from methane without pollution and without emissions, this would be a big advantage for Israel as holding a large reservoirs of natural gas. And we want to do international collaboration, which is why we are participating in many such webinars. I would say, I will just, maybe I will finish with the fact that we have a quite lively let's say, environment for hydrogen. We have companies in all of the three major sectors that I mentioned, and a lot of academic research. For example, Gencell is a company that makes fuel cells, just joined the Israeli stock exchange in an IPO. We have a company generating hydrogen, H2 Pro, which with quite impressive investments by several players, including the Bill Gates Fund Breakthrough for Energy. As in terms of Ministry of Energy, we are funding the first refueling station in Israel. We are looking at, we are also funding the hydrogen that will fuel this station, and we will bring the equipment, the buses and the trucks that will refuel from that station. We are looking at using the methane for generation of hydrogen as well. So we are funding pyrolysis research for hydrogen. We are looking into hydrogen storage underground by the Israeli Geological Survey. We have strong academic research in fuel cells, and I gave it just as a curiosity example of fuel cell production in space that we are now funding. And we've published, by the way, the 2050 plan for Israel in terms of emission reductions, and we have not stated our precise policy on hydrogen, so it's an important point to mention here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Friedman, for your insights. And indeed, it sounds like we are at the right spot in time as the green hydrogen strategy for Israel is still on its way to actually maybe give some creative insights also from the German strategy and see where both countries can work together, learn from each other, and benefit for the better. So these were our two keynotes focusing on potentials of collaboration and already providing some insights how the situation is in both countries. We will now start with the first of two panel discussions. The first one is on the state as a catalyst fostering innovation. And it's my pleasure now to welcome our panelists for the first round. It's Georg Dura, Senior Project Developer Hydrogen Ecosystems from ZBT, the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Center. It's Dr. Yael Barash-Harman, Head of Technology and Renewable Energy from the Israeli Ministry of Energy. It's Rüdiger Hinze, Staff Section Green Hydrogen Economy from the Ministry of Economic and Innovation from the Free and Hanseatic City of Hamburg. And it is Asa Sif, co-founder and CEO of NRG Storage, a startup from Israel. So welcome. Let me change my screen. So there we go. Okay, we have the full panel here with us. Great. So as we just finished with the Israeli Ministry of Energy, maybe we pick it up from here. Yael, already your colleague pointed out where Israel is, but maybe you could pick it up here. What is your estimation? What is the state of energy transition in Israel, and what are challenges? And looking at the scope of today's event, bringing Germany and Israel together, what are not only challenges, but also opportunities?
Well, thinking about it, all the challenges came to my mind, no opportunities, but I want to start with something positive. There is opportunities. I'm a bit joking, but first, the good thing is that the Ministry of Energy is actually working on a plan. So we have a plan, and the government approved for 2030. And uniquely for Israel, we wrote a plan for 2050, and hopefully the government will approve that when it will come to the end of the work. And that's very important, because then it puts the mindset of everyone on the right page, and we can already feel it. And I'll mention it in a second. So what are the challenges? So Israel is condensed with challenges. First is the absence of land. We are a tiny country. So renewable energy in Israel is mostly based on solar energy, and almost less on the wind, and even less on hydropower. What does it mean? It means that we put a lot of our effort in solar energy, and that puts us in the mindset that we need to do a dual use of land. And I can feel it on my desk and everywhere, that's actually what we are doing, a very strong pushing for a dual use of land in Israel. So we're doing a huge mega pilot for agrivoltaic projects, combining solar and agriculture. We're coming out with tenders or working on tenders for using solar in the sides of roads, in trapped areas, and every place that creatively we can building integrated PV rooftops, but every place that we can think of that solar can fit. Then coming back to the challenges, the Israel population is still growing, and so that's putting our electricity consumption in an increase. Advantage that Gideon mentioned is that most of the way we consume energy is mostly from electricity. So if you generate your electricity from solar, you target a lot of, you can, like, it's a big segment that we should take care of. And, you know, electricity, you can convert electricity from solar, so that's good. But then we come back to something that is very painful. I'm sure that not just for Israel, but also to every other company, is the size of the grid. When you are counting on solar energy, then it's produced in certain hours. So the transition from one season to another and from 1 hour of the day to another, and our grid is not really capable for it. Opportunities, I always say, is like Israel. If you think about Israel, we don't have we don't have oil, we don't have water, we don't have land, and what that's create? It's create very high innovation levels. So that's also an opportunity. When you have a lot of limitation, it makes you better. So this is my optimistic line.
Very well, thank you. I think optimism is all what we need here when transforming the energy sector into the green future, as Stefan Kaufman said it at the very beginning. The future is green indeed, and probably with the weather conditions, the climate conditions in Israel, it looks like Israel could and should be the ideal partner. And that's also what Stefan Kaufman said at the beginning, Germany needs to import green hydrogen in order to fill our energy systems here. So coming from what's possible and also what the challenges are in Israel, maybe let's jump further north to the free and Hanseatic city of Hamburg. And Rüdiger Hinze, maybe you could, for the beginning, tell us a little bit more, because we speak about the state as a catalyst. What are the 8 projects from Hamburg that have been selected by the German government for the next stage of the ECEI process?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Owens. Maybe first of all, thank you for this kind invitation. It's a great pleasure to me. I know a little bit of Israel. I've been there 15 years ago twice, and I love that very much. And I, of course, recognize the development since then, especially in the economic and startup scene and so on. We are looking very, very interested from here to Israel on that. And also thank you, Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Friedman, for this impressive keynotes. Nothing absolutely new for me, but the impressive thing and the interesting thing also all the time is that we, since someone speak the same language all over the countries and all over the political parties as well. So that's very impressive to hear the big background. And to your question, sorry, to your question, yeah, we are very, very happy. It's the framework of the IPCI, important project of common European interests. The German government selected a total of 62 projects in Germany the week before last week as a contribution to the European hydrogen strategy and to the achieving of the climate targets in Europe. And among them are 27 projects in northern Germany and 8 very large projects in Hamburg. And the Hamburg projects represent the whole value chain of a green hydrogen, from production over logistics to consumption in industry, shipping, or aviation. And in detail, we have a large project of partners like Vattenfall, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Shell Germany, and Heating Hamburg for a big more than 100 megawatt electrolyzer in the harbor. We have a project of H2 storaging. Ms. Hamann pointed that out, the problem with the volatility of the energy and the problem, but maybe also the chance to handle that with smart grids and stuff like that. We have a big project in that topic. We have a project to further develop the gas network in Hamburg to a hydrogen network. We have a big steel project with ArcelorMittal, a big steel player in the world and also in Hamburg. We have a project with Airbus. As you maybe know, we are #3 aviation industry site in the world, as we say, after Seattle and Toulouse. And we have a aircraft production project and fuel cell technology project with Airbus and some small partners. We have a big project on the way to the all import questions with the Hamburg Harbor and Logistics company. It's one of the 2 big players in harbor logistics, container logistics in Hamburg, and they are on their way to face the import topic, which is, of course, for a harbor city like Hamburg, a big question. We have a project with ferries, a project with pushing boats in the harbor. Yeah, and that is that all very large projects. I think the entire sum of funding of the federal government is around 8 billion euro, and they allocate well over, I think, 22 billion private investment, and from that point you can see that it's a very huge entree, and I think a good support to the European hydrogen strategy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hinze. This sounds like there is a lot of projects ongoing. You already mentioned a couple of well-known large corporates that are also involved here. But next to these large national or multinational corporations, obviously we have smaller, most of the time, fastly growing startups. like, for example, energy storage from Israel. So, Azam, maybe you can tell us a little bit more. What was your motivation for establishing energy storage? What's the genesis, and what role did actually the government support play for you at the very beginning and even now up until today? You're still on mute.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Our technology was developed in the Hebrew University by Professor Yoel Sasson, a very well-known chemist. He was the head of the School of Chemistry in the university. He's now our CTO and co-founder together with me. We realized that there is some, I would say, misconcept in maybe all the companies and organizations that work in hydrogen storage technology. If you look at their publications, maybe most of them, they focus on how much hydrogen can be stored in 1 liter of fuel, of carrier. What is called the density, the gravitational density, gravimetric density. And we believe that the key for real hydrogen economy is based on a few items. One is it should be very, very green. So we work with, we store in water plus another compound, but basically in water. We use as a hydrogen material to store the hydrogen, something like baking soda. So it's very, very green. Secondly, we believe that energy efficiency is a very, very important feature. If you look, for example, if you take 1 kilogram of hydrogen in a standard fuel cell, you can extract from it about 16 to 17 kilowatt hours for each 1 kilogram of hydrogen. If you look at the publications of companies that work in hydrogen, in chemical storage of hydrogen, they claim that they need more than 13 kilowatt hours in order to extract these 16 kilowatt hours. That means you pay 13 to get 16. It cannot be economically. So we focus on this point 2, and we can get down to about 2 kilowatt hours instead of 13. So this makes it very, very efficient. And the third one, maybe the most important one, key, is the cost. And the cost, we target the cost of few cents per kilowatt hour of storage, both direct hydrogenation and dehydrogenation, and reduction of about 80% of the cost of transportation. We pay for all this in maybe less concentration of the less density of the hydrogen in the molecule, but not in the full system. What is relevant is the full system. For this purpose, we established the company, and we got a very, very nice support from both governmental organizations. The first one, the most important one maybe, is the Ministry of Energy that supports us in few programs very nicely, in very nice grants. And not only the grants, they support us in other aspects too. And the second one is the Israeli Innovation Authority that also selects us as a very important player in the future. So with this and some other private investors that are all involved very deeply in the energy market, we established the company. During last month, we doubled the team. We are very small yet, but we doubled the team this month, and we are going to work in full steam ahead in order to achieve these goals.
Sounds like an impressive growth story. So already, congratulations. And I find it particularly interesting, as you say, that the initial idea came out of academic research, so out of university. And this is probably a keystone of success for all innovative ideas. And this brings me to Georg Dura from the ZBT, one of the leading research institutes in Europe for fuel cell and hydrogen technologies. So, Mr. Dura, maybe you want to, first of all, briefly introduce the ZBT and your work in particular, and maybe also speak about governmental regulations regarding the direction of your research. What is the support of the government? And if you hear the story of ASASIF, I'm sure you have already seen similar stories also at your institute. And you are still on mute.
So this is always the same. So I'm so thank you very much, Mr. Opens, and it's also a pleasure for me to talk today to you a little bit. The ZBT is located in the middle of Germany. It's 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers far away from Düsseldorf. So we have 20 minutes from Düsseldorf airport by car or by train. It's no problem. And the institute is also nearby the Rhine. It's one of the living streets for this region, because in Duisburg we have the biggest inland harbor in Europe. So it's a little bit different to Hamburg, but most of the containers came from Rotterdam, so from the Netherlands, and it's the most traffic in this area for containers. So, and for the institute, we are built 20 years ago, and we did research and development on fuel cell and hydrogen equipment. We are focused on industry partners in R&D, and we are an independent service provider. The ZBT, the Center of Fuel Cells and Hydrogen, is a daughter of the University of Duisburg-Essen. And at the moment we have 100 fully time employees and a lot of students, researchers. And we get a limited institutional funding by the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, but they give us no direction what we have to do with the money or something else. So we are free to get research with this money. We have a laboratory area of 1,200 square meters with a chemical laboratory, and also with test boxes for fuel cells up to 1,000 kilowatt. So we have a high-end media material research area with gas chematographs and so on, to analyze the gases coming in the fuel cell and coming out of the fuel cell. We have an own production on 500 square meters for the plates. For the bipolar plates, we have it's a compound material we research on. So and in additional, we have a 1,000 square meter test field for hydrogen, where we have 3 different electrolyzers, and also the fully equipment for a filling station, so that we can simulate the storage up to 1,000 bar, and we can fill 350 bar, 700 bar, and so the companies can develop the protocols in our surrounding. And so we operate with international. So sometimes we get electrolyzers from Asia, for example, and they will test it by us and see if the data are exact or if there are some problems. And so in cooperation, we are open for every country, not only for Europe. So every country every company can come to us, and we will check it if it's okay for us and for our mind. We will cooperate with the company and do some research or some development. Yeah. So we are also competence. We have also competence on membrane electrode assembly. It's I would say the heart of a fuel cell, and a lot of companies, also Asia companies, came to us and say, okay, check it if the parameters are in the range. So yeah, stack technology is also core competence, and also chemical fuels. We are also interested in other fuels, not only, so it's also for LRC and also for ammonia and so on. It's also what we prove and where we work with. Yeah, what is my main interest? My main interest is competitions I did in the last 3 years. One of the competitions was a hydrogen area, Düsseldorf-Wupper. It means in the area of Düsseldorf, Wuppertal, and Neuss, and also Duisburg. We selected out what hydrogen projects we have in buses or also in garbage trucks and so on. And so I'm interested in get buses on the street in North Rhine-Westphalia. We try to get a program to get 1,000 buses on the street in the next 2 years. And therefore we need also filling stations. And though we think in this, competitions, how can we realize a supplying system so that we can guarantee that the buses are always runs. And another special field of me is a program it calls Rhine. It's a cooperation between North Rhine-Westphalia and South Netherlands, where we try to get 10 barges on the Rhine by hydrogen, and also 12 trains. And we are also in the concept of, or we will realize filling stations for barges and for trucks. Yeah, and this is founded by the government, and I'm in the groups for the hubs and also for the barges and for the locks. And another new project you see.
Maybe we take a break here, Mr. Dura, in order to better reflect also the positions of the others, because what you just said is very interesting. I find that you're looking for partners to cooperate with. So if I understand you correctly, it could be startups, it could be corporates, it could be other academic research institutions, and it could also be governmental institutions, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So looking at Yael and the Israeli Ministry of Energy, so do you actually already collaborate with institutions like, for example, the ZBT or others in Germany/Europe when it comes to testing new forms of how to apply, for example, green hydrogen or other energy usage applications?
So we have collaboration with the GRC labs. So academic professor from Israeli university goes and try their technology and ideas over there. And we found it very helpful because sometimes it's just infrastructure as Mr. Dura was just describing, it's infrastructure that is super expensive and not very easy to get. So you can come and safe also, I have to say, with the hydrogen. We had some accidents, so it's very important. I think there's a lot of place for that, because we have a lot of researchers both in Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion, Technion, universities, Hebrew University, that are doing hydrogen research. So if we'll open this path that we give grants, what we do is that we let them submit to our academic grants, and then they can go and collaborate, and they get also the funding for the traveling and for the costs, etc. So we find it very, very important, and I think it's something that specifically in the hydrogen field, where it's much more complicated than any other trial in our field. Right. So yes.
Literally translated from German into English, we would probably say there is some music in the air. So there is lots of opportunities. By the way, this is an opportunity for all of you who are listening and carefully taking notes for this very first panel. Please feel invited. When you have a comment or a question, please use the Q&A box here on Zoom to type in your question, and we'll make sure we'll pick it up here on the very first panel. Mr. Hinze, we heard now from Mr. Dura what's possible in the Rhine area. So you already introduced some projects at the beginning that are now taking place, or at least to be planned in Hamburg. Are there any opportunities for Israeli companies / startups to participate? Are there like maybe even similar programs like Yael Haman just introduced for companies coming from abroad to Israel? Is there something comparable? Not that I want to create any competition here. We are supposed to speak about collaboration, but I mean, it's more or less the same at the end, best case. So are there opportunities for Israeli companies who want to investigate what's in for them in Hamburg?
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe to point that out at first, this competition collaboration thing. The last 12 years, I did the cluster policy in Hamburg, and cluster policy is for us a policy to bring together cooperation under competitors. We call it co-opetition, because we in main industrial economy fields, we have the situation that we of course are in a competition to regions around Hamburg, but also know that we have some chances to catch only if we collaborate. So we are definitely looking on that point. Where's the competition? Because where the competition is, there is the highest possibility to find something on top. So for us, it's absolutely fine if we are in a competition. It's not a reason not to discuss. It's the reason to start discussion. And as I pointed out, those IPCI projects are the absolutely big front runner projects, and it's good to make clear the direction. But to establish a green hydrogen economy, we definitely, as much as need small projects, and we definitely need small companies to act with us. So the next step for us is to look how to plane the field behind those big forerunner projects. We are always interested in contact to SME from outside, and also to startups from outside. And we, as I pointed out, we are still in contact to Israel and the Israel startup scene. Our main contact partner is Hamburg Invest. Hamburg Invest has already contact to the foreign chamber of commerce in Israel, and also has contact to ELNET, I think. And they try to act as a unique as a partner of contact, and they organize every contact which is needed to companies, to research institutions, to universities, and also to the city of Hamburg if it's needed. I'm a little bit sorry because we are only some days too early, and I cannot say so much. We are launching a specific program to startups in the hydrogen economy, but I have to not say more till the 10th of June, which is just two or 3 or 4 days away, and I could bring that information afterwards. But of course, that's maybe I could point it out. We are of course looking to those big projects because we need the driver function of those big companies which are going on the way, and we of course need the money, of course. But we all know, I think, also on the federal level, we know that an economy is much more than big companies. It's mainly, and the innovative part is mainly the small companies, the startups.
I see Azad Sif nodding here, and probably already thinking about how to apply for any program in Hamburg. And before we can go that path, and happy, Mr. Hinze, to share I mean, obviously you could release everything you have here on this forum. It's on the record, so, but I understand that we have to wait for some more days. And
sorry.
Happy to forward everything you have also to our partner network in Israel, to the Ministry of Energy, and also to our partners like the AHK. You mentioned the German-Israeli Chamber of Commerce, as well as Startup Nation Central, who happens to be network partners like Hamburg Invest of our program that I mentioned earlier on the German-Israeli Network of Startups and Mittelstand. We now have a question from the chat. From Michael Geller, or Michael Geller, to Azad Sif. A question: if it is economical to transport hydrogen from Israel to Germany, and how would it work? So maybe you could comment on that, on the economical conditions, and maybe also on the logistical question. Please have to unmute yourself.
To say the truth, I never thought about this option. It depends on many aspects. Question one, is it possible to use economically ship for transportation? Will be an option of pipelines to transport liquids that carry the hydrogen? I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this. We can start a feasibility study together with one of the German partners to see if it is possible. I'm not sure that this is the right way, but it's question of that should be addressed in a more serious study. I don't have an answer. Sorry.
No worries. It's a complex one, and I'm sure the officials from the ministry are already taking notes about a potential new project on this field, how to transport the green hydrogen from Israel to Germany, in order to be used here by the industry. Dr. Hinze, sorry, Mr. Hinze.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I could say a little bit about that. Well, we know the first hydrogen transport shipping going from Australia to Japan. It's also German development, and we right now very intense discussing with some partners in the Arabic room and in Scotland and about transporting, because we have a lot of energy exporters, ongoing energy exporters, and we have definitely a need to import energy and hydrogen, and it must not be hydrogen. I personally believe it will be some methanol or ammoniac, and ammoniac, for example, is not a new deal. We know that. We know that on ships, we know that on roads, we know that on trucks in the harbor. I think Germany uses 3 million tons of ammoniac. It's gray ammoniac, of course, but it's I think the difference is not the color. So we have to go into the discussion which is the media to transport it. I'm definitely sure there will be transport of hydrogen, but maybe not hydrogen, but a derivative. But we need to discuss that because we need it very soon. We think we need it before 2030. So we are starting that discussion right now.
Yes. One more thing is that if we could utilize the future to come EastMed pipeline for natural gas and already think about how you utilize it in the right way so you can use it also to transport hydrogen. That's something that we, the regulators, they have to start working on it even before there is a pipeline.
I'm sorry, we also talk about pipelines, of course.
I'd like to come back to the Med East pipeline in a second, but let's first go to Georg Dura, who already lifted his hand here to comment.
Yeah, so this is right. We are on the same discussion. So we have a big pipeline net, and so we are the center for the steel production here in Germany. We have ThyssenKrupp Steel here. We have also Hüttenwerk Krupp Mannesmann. So it's behind me, and so it's a big discussion here. But I think we will first see. We have first to regulate that in the transport we get a small visibility for the people, because I think this is a total different discussion to having hydrogen in such a pure concentration for using in transport. So it's different to to use it in standard industrial processes, and so there is we need it, and there will be find ways also from Hamburg. I think that there with the for example the ammonia, it will be cracked and something else, and in pipelines it will transport in our region, and these are very important questions for the future. And so we have to cooperate with everyone so that we can, I agree with Mr. Hinze, in 2010, we need it. So it's, and on 2030 is too late, because for the regulations, you need 2 years to get the allowance to build an electrolyzer, and then you need another time to build it, and we are now in 21, so 25 is not so far away for build up a system.
Absolutely. That's probably a challenge we all have to face, that regulation is needed, but also is time intense every now and then. Maybe Yael, to end up this round, as we already mentioned now, the EastMed pipeline. Obviously, we are following here in Germany the news in detail about the well, more or less newly discovered gas deposits of the Israeli coast. So what would you say? Does this, how is the interplay with the ideas of fostering green hydrogen, and what role could this play also for the for the EastMed, not green, for the EastMed pipeline? Maybe you could round it up here, focusing on the Israel 2050 program.
Okay, yes, thank you. So there are two parts for my answer. First, when you look at the 2050 plan, we didn't really specify technologies, and that's the smart thing to do. You need to set the goal, and you don't know which technology, which underdog will become the champion of the next decade. So we didn't state which technology, but we do try to, in the Ministry of Energy and specifically in our department, we do try to foster new technologies for hydrogen and new regulation, because many times the technologies in the end pass us and the regulation is behind. So that's why we try to invest in the entire chain. So one aspect is the production of hydrogen. So we have Lilach Amirav from the Technion that is doing an amazing research and a breakthrough research that convert directly from light to hydrogen. Already showed 4.2% efficiency. That the DOE says that it will become economical when we'll reach the 5%. And she's trying to reduce the cost of production to $1 per kilo. So that will be a game changer. And then more on regulation, we build, although only one fuel station and one line of hydrogen production. It's important because we really want to solve the regulation, and by building one, after you build one, you can build the others from the regulation point of view. But let's go back to our discovery of natural gas. So like all countries, we try to sell as much as we can now, but still we are looking at it as a research that it can be utilized to produce a green hydrogen in a way that you take the methane and you don't allow oxygen to interact, and you produce a hydrogen and pure carbon, or you dig put the carbon dioxide underground. But the other way is to actually create a carbon powder, and in that way produce hydrogen from the methane. So this is a technology that we already invest in researchers. And like Asaziv, Asaziv is unique, but not as unique. We have several researchers that started in academia, and what we do is we are like parents. We support them till they are 40 or 50. So we start in the academia. Then we support them when they build their startup, and we called it the startup fund. And further down the road, we support them in the pilot and demonstration, and we try the whole way through to support them with the regulation. So this is how we pushing for the green hydrogen as good as we can.
Very well. And maybe to round it up here before we switch to the second panel, Asa, maybe you could comment on, Yael already mentioned the public programs for startups, but how's the situation in Israel regarding private investment funds for hydrogen, green hydrogen companies? What can we maybe learn or take from your experience also for the German startups here on today's forum?
I've said before, our experience is that companies that or private investors that are involved in energy market, they understand that hydrogen has a very big future, and they are the best candidates to invest. And in fact, that's what happened in our case. we are looking for other partners, but most of, I would say, most of the partners, basic investors, prefer to invest in a mature company that has products, and they are less ready to invest or to cooperate with a company that develops technology or does not yet have real products. We are in the phase that we are working on a pilot today with the financial support of the Ministry of Energy, but we don't have yet products. May I comment about the hydrogen transportation?
Please.
Okay, just about the question about using ships for transportation. If you use compressed hydrogen at 250 bars ship, that's a problem from safety issues, from how much hydrogen you can transport, and the fact that you must have cylindrical tanks, cylindrical containers that leaves a lot of surrounding volume which is not used. If you use something which is a chemical liquid like ours, we use something which is very like water. It's water basically plus a formate. You can use the whole volume, so you can maybe transport maybe in a more safe way and more. But as I said before, it should be studied.
Thank you very much for this last comment, Hazem. So this was the very first panel, the state as a catalyst. I'd like to thank all our panelists here on the virtual stage for being with us, for your comments, your experience. And now it's my pleasure to hand over to Rasmus C. Beck. Rasmus is, well, first of all, a member of the advisory board of the European Leadership Network in Germany, and also he's the CEO of the Economic Development Agency for the city of Duisburg, and he will moderate this second panel and first of all introduce our panelists. So Rasmus, the floor is yours.
Carsten, thank you very much. Yeah, dear ladies and gentlemen, as the panelists before pointed out, that Duisburg is a crucial case in the whole hydrogen discussion, because we are hosting the biggest steel production site in Europe, and we know that steel production is a very more or less old industry process, and we have the opportunity to transform the steel production with hydrogen to a clean energy future. And therefore, I have 4 guests. As Carsten has pointed out before, we talked about the governmental issues, and now we would like to talk about business development. And I think the innovation bridge between Germany and Israel was always formed by entrepreneurial spirit and good cooperations on a corporate level. And as you pointed out before, we need a strong cooperation between our countries. But this cooperation, of course, will be also in many projects between corporates and industries. Therefore, I think the government has a very explicit and stimulating role. And now let's make a little deep dive for the next 30 minutes into this question, how the innovation bridge between Israel and Germany could be built up in this new branch, in this new technology field of hydrogen production and distribution. Therefore, I would like to welcome 4 honorable speakers. First of all, there's Thomas Bistry. He's the founder of Clean Energy Future Consulting. Secondly, Professor Gideon Greider, the founder of H2 Pro. company from Israel. The third one is Dr. Gil Proector. He's the head of climate change policy in the Ministry of Environmental Protection in Israel. And last not least, Dr. Peter West. He's the Chief Strategy Officer of Green Cells in Germany. So let's make a quick first dive, and let me start with Thomas Bistrin. Thomas, maybe just continuing the issues from the first panel, what do you think is the concrete status of hydrogen-based applications in Germany, and what do you think? Where are we located on the way to a hydrogen-based economy?
Yeah, welcome. From my side, maybe as a background, I used to work for a couple of years. I used to work at an oil major dealing with the global hydrogen activities, and since about 2 years, I'm supporting, let's say, the hydrogen world with experience, because that is something we are lacking at the moment, practical experience. So a lot of ideas. And so if we ask me, what happens at the moment is that, let's say, the different branches are all, I mean, hydrogen is everywhere. But let's say you got discussions in the energy branch, you got discussions in the home heating branch, you got discussion in mobility. That was my major topic, mobility, and you got hydrogen discussion in industry and in politics, of course. Where are we in Germany? Everybody is doing something that is very positive. Many of the companies who are leading maybe global hydrogen technology are from Germany from time to time. The other topic is that since a couple of years, if you want to embed something like hydrogen as an economy, you need to start, of course, with research and development. I think that has been happened for the last couple of years. I don't think there's any major breakthrough expected, but the next phase is you need to optimize and you need to activate the market. I think that's where we are at the moment, at the small end of basic research and the market activation. Creating the market, I think, is key, and that's what people try to do. More or less with success, always not. One of the major achievements in Germany, I think, is the hydrogen strategy, because that is the result of all our activities in the past years to explain how hydrogen can work, what the challenges is on hydrogen. Of course, the challenge is scaling. The challenge is dimension, and so on. But what is a major breakthrough we need? Economical discussions are always compromises. So you will never have the best technology. You will never have the cleanest technology. You will always have the most, let's say, the compromise of having an economical solution. And that's what happens at the moment, I think. So what we need to do is we need to make hydrogen activities economically attractive, because then the companies are really doing something. I mean, the big major companies who are dealing, I hear all the projects, which is absolutely fantastic, but I hear them from Duisburg, I hear them from Munich, I hear them from other countries. Everybody is working like hell, but the collaboration and cooperation is not really there. So everybody is doing the same stuff over and over again, and so on and so on. So that's, I think, the situation where we are at the moment. So a lot of things can be improved. And also, we always try to do international collaboration, because it is so key that we all do the same thing, and not countries are going into own solutions. So all this is quite important, I think. But that's my vision on the hydrogen economy at the moment in Germany.
Thomas, let me just give you another question on these challenges and cleavages. As you pointed out that, for example, cooperation is necessary. Many cities, many regions are more or less doing the same things on hydrogen. But you also said, okay, we need something like a certain baseline, even in the R&D and the knowledge infrastructure. And now it comes to these market processes. Where do you see the restrictions? What should be changed, or what do we have to work on?
As I said, I think it's quite important to have these major projects. And if you all talk to the government in Germany, they also say we first talk to the major companies, to the global players, because they have a kind of lever to deal with it. But I agree with Mr. Hinze that my experience within for the last 2 years, when I offered my service to the hydrogen world, it is not the big clients who are asking. They think they can do it better. But all the small and mid-size, small and mid-size enterprises are the ones who really need to change the area. So you need to have reproducible and economically attractive hydrogen cases, whatever, on mobility, on industry, and so on. You need to engage these people, and there I think the startup scene comes into the game. Yeah, to say you need technological solutions. You need to have improvements, like the example of everybody is looking, how can I transport hydrogen from A to B, the most hydrogen in the less space. Second issue is, whenever I see energy and grids and pipelines and everything is not industry, all fine. But when I see, for example, mobility, I see vehicle and production, and in the middle, a wonder happens, because the infrastructure. If you work in a company in logistics, you know that infrastructure is always a cost factor. You will never hardly make money out of just infrastructure. You need to combine it somehow, and that's the issue at the moment, that finding people who deal with infrastructure, which is absolutely necessary, is tricky as long as it's not economically attractive. Yeah. So, and that is something we need to work on. Scale up, cost down, do it. Yeah, do more. Scale leads to scaling, but I think the whole economy decides on economically attractive solutions.
Yeah, I think a very good point. It's not only about producing enough hydrogen and not bringing the hydrogen from A to B. It's also about collaboration and for building up a knowledge base, and on the other hand, building up business cases between Israel and Germany. And therefore, I would like to hand over to Gil Proector. He's, as I said, the head of climate change policy from the Ministry of Environmental Protection in Israel. And my first question to you, Gil, is what role does green hydrogen play in the Israel 2050 program? And what is the relationship to environmental protection, and on the other hand, building up new business relations, for example, to Germany or the industrial sites in Europe?
Hi, thank you very much. So I think Israel is now in the midst or towards finalizing its low carbon strategy, and clearly a crucial component in that strategy is the ability to use a clean form of energy, and hydrogen is clearly one of the, if you like, the most promising or the holy grails of the near future low carbon transition. And I think that in this context, in Israel, as well as we've heard in Germany and elsewhere, hydrogen is very, very important as a form of energy in the three major sectors. So in the power sector, in the industry, and in the transport. And in that sense, I think what really one of the issues is, and it has been mentioned before, is how we produce the hydrogen. We think that hydrogen must be, in principle, green hydrogen, so be generated from a renewable source, and I think that should be the important component, as opposed to other forms of hydrogen, such as hydrogen generated from natural gas or other sources that would generate emissions. Now, I think in order to do that, in order to develop a green hydrogen major source of energy in Israel and in Europe, then we really need to think on the different components of the if you like, of the system. So it's not only how we generate it, but what are the applications that hydrogen would come in and substitute, for example, fossil fuels. So in Israel, we have done an analysis that looked, for example, on different industrial applications, different temperature requirements, and we looked and we analyzed the economics of using hydrogen as a substitute to, for example, fossil fuels. Also important is, and this is especially important in a small country such as Israel, is the issue of storage, because if we think that hydrogen has a very important and significant potential in enabling Israel to increase its share of renewable energy in the power sector, then hydrogen as a form of storage will have to be not only used and used in large, if you like, large facilities, so adjacent or part of power sectors, but also, and this is crucial, also in a more dispersed, distributed, small scale. And here we need to invest a lot in R&D and also commercialization. And in that context, also it's important to look on safety, because, you know, if we want to try and promote a use of hydrogen as a source of stored energy adjacent or not very far to urban areas, then we need to consider what are how we do that best from a safety point of view. Another issue is that Israel has quite or has invested a lot in its natural gas pipeline network. And what we want to see and what we want to learn from the experience in Germany and elsewhere is how we can use the current pipeline to transport hydrogen, and what, if you like, what modifications, or even more importantly, what specific or specifications we need to apply in our current regulation in order to ensure that future pipeline investments will be able to transport hydrogen. So we have to think about any new investments from a point of view of using hydrogen. And I think this is very, very important, and that should be part of our strategy. And the other very important issue, and I think pretty much all the previous speakers noted, is the issue of economics. So we need to ensure that we develop and assist in different regulatory measures to unlock private investments in order to scale up investments in demonstration projects, in commercialization, and we need to, and I think that in the context of Israel, one side would be, for example, embedding pricing carbon in that context would increase the price of the competitors, if you like, the fossil fuels. So that this is one side of the coin, if you like. The other side of the coin.
Gil, just let me
Yes.
It's a very interesting point. So just to sharpen or describe your strategy more in detail. In the first panel, it was clear that Germany is looking for reliable international suppliers for green hydrogen. And as you said, maybe the pure amount of hydrogen would not come all alone from Israel. but it's also about being a supplier for the technology and the know-how to cross-cluster it with other branches, with other technologies. As you mentioned cybersecurity, for example, or also other branches. Could you describe it more? What are the spillover effects from established technology branches in Israel to the hydrogen initiative or your hydrogen strategy? Where could Israel also be a supplier from the technological point of view?
So in terms of technological innovation, so as was mentioned before, there are different companies that essentially working on developing different solutions to the different sectors, so the different types of applications, not only transport and industry, but also to the grid, so essentially to the power sector. But I think what is important here is to have the right signal from the government point of view in order to really push forward for that private initiatives that would collaborate with international partners, such as in Germany, in order to develop the solutions and demonstrate them in Israel. So Israel could certainly serve as a beta site, if you like, for new technologies.
Okay, so I think that is a very nice vision and also a well-known picture from other technology fields. So let me hand over to Gideon Grader, because he owns such a company which could become a technology provider for Germany and of course the rest of the world. So Gideon, maybe first of all, where did H2 come from? What is unique about your company and what is your share in this discussion?
Okay, I will try to share a few elements here, and as you requested, I'm one of the founders of H2 Pro, which the company started actually operating about 2.5 years ago, in 2019. Although we have been developing the technology for the last 8 or 9 years at the Technion, okay? And at the heart of it, what we're doing is we basically separated normal electrolysis into 2 components. We decoupled electrolysis. So it's now, for us, it's a swing mode process where we make hydrogen in one step and then we make oxygen in a second step. Okay, so in the nutshell, we do not, because we do it in separate steps, we do not need a membrane. And we make our electrodes, actually, it's very similar to how a battery works. So we charge the anode, okay? We charge it, we make hydrogen, we charge the anode with hydroxide ions. And then no oxygen is made. And then we regenerate that anode emitting oxygen. And what it buys us is a way to package these electrodes in a very compact way, like you do batteries. We simply roll them and we put them into cylinders. And in eventual system, like multi-megawatt systems, there will be anywhere from 100 to several hundreds of these reactors, which some of them make hydrogen and some of them make oxygen. So this is what this technology is about, and what it buys us is a possibility to work very close to the thermal neutral voltage. So we make hydrogen at about 1.5 volts, and consequently our efficiencies they can be quite high. Okay, so it's in the mid-90s, which is considerably higher efficiency than other systems. Okay, so that's to answer your question about what we're doing. Okay.
Okay, Gideon, when you just of course, we have an impression about your technology. I think it's a very international and very scalable business case. So
Right.
when we look about the cooperation between Israel and in this case Germany, what do you expect from German business partners? What makes a good cooperation and of course, do you have any touching points with the German market in your technology?
So the answer is yes and yes and yes. Yeah. So first of all, we are building demo units that next year we will get to the megawatt scale, and we're looking to deploy a few demo units in the world. Some of them will be in Israel. But some of them will be in other places, and I think Europe would be a great place. And we're looking for companies to work with in the deployment of some. This is in 2023, something on the order of 0.5 megawatt in scale. Okay, so these will be units that we will be producing next year. And by 2023, they will be ready to be tested in beta sites. So yes, we are looking for companies to join forces and to deploy our beta sites. They have to be tested before any company will buy it. And we're looking to deploy in different verticals. So in fact, I heard Mr. Dura talk about the steel industry. I think this is very interesting. In general, the chemical industry is very interesting for green hydrogen just because of the volumes, the sheer large volumes involved. Of course, the other cases are in refueling stations. That is more of the kind of a low-hanging fruit that is there. And one of our investors is Hyundai Motor Company, and they, I know, are interested in that direction very much. I think they are supplying hydrogen trucks to Europe. Now, so they're involved in commissioning of refueling stations. So that's one thing. And then I can share with you that we are cooperating with ABB on the power supply. And so this is an ongoing cooperation with a very strong German company that is developing power supplies. And another institute that we are cooperating with is Fraunhofer.
Okay, great.
Okay, Fraunhofer. This is the Fraunhofer in Dresden. It's IFAM or something. But it's the institute in Dresden.
Gideon, just a transfer question. As Thomas Bistry said before, that in Germany, market processes should be boosted right now. Therefore, we need entrepreneurial ideas, new business cases, more exchange between not only the big shots, also smaller companies. What is your impression? Do these state-driven programs help you to find new customers, or what is the structure of your market, even in the international perspective?
First of all, for us, the business development is just at its inception. Okay, we are very much over the past 2 years and this year engaged with R&D, just with scaling up this technology. We felt that it's a bit premature to engage in business development when you are like 3 years away from the market. But now it's getting closer, and we are looking at it, and again the decision of where to place for us the better sites will depend on the customers that then can place orders with us. So
okay.
this would be the key to our decision of where to place our units is the ongoing implementation of this kind of technology.
Okay, Gideon, thank you very much for sharing with us the entrepreneurial and corporate level from Israel. Now let's hand over to Peter West. He's the Chief Strategy Officer of Green Cells, a company from Germany active worldwide. So Peter, last not least, maybe you just introduce yourself and let me just ask you the first question. As I said, your company is active worldwide. Where do you, on one hand, see the strength of German companies in this hydrogen new branch? And on the other hand, what is the role of the solar energy sector? Even from, of course, what is your point of view on the branch and also on your special business case?
Yeah, well, three interesting questions, of course, Rasmus, thanks a lot. So Green Cells is, yes, a small, medium-sized company in Germany, not too small, one could say, maybe the number 10 or 6 if you discount a few Chinese competitors in the world of global EPC and developers in solar. So we are looking at, green hydrogen, more or less waiting for the silver bullet of renewables in a way. But anyhow, we're just taking technology and we want to install solar near the load. Transport costs matters. We're looking at the business models, and we do see that solar and wind have been kind of a role model maybe for green hydrogen production, because we have seen cost of wind produced energy, solar produced energy going down tremendously over the last decades. And we truly hope that this will happen with green hydrogen as well, because I think, if I'm correct, and I'm not a branch expert, the cost of electrolyzers should have been coming down like almost 50% within the last 5 years. And this is for sure to get on this process. And we see technologies like Gideon, and I'm totally sad that no Siemens has adopted that technology, but it had to be Korean partners and so on. And I do see a serious problem in Germany, because when you're talking about the strength of German solar firms, all of them were fleeing away from Germany. No module producer anymore. There's just Meyer Burger coming back now. There's kind of a certain, we have 2 inverter companies to speak of. Israel has the best one, I must admit. But Siemens is now bought a small inverter company, only a 2% market share. SMA is struggling because maybe there's not an industrial policy behind that. Technology leaders are Hyundai, Suncro, and they outcompete the German companies. And this cannot happen in terms of green hydrogen, because we must be open to adopt technologies. I've been talking to Siemens. They even asked me, do you have any solar sites where we could put our hydrogen production on or something? This cannot be. They have to be open to international technology. Cannot be just not invented here. We don't do it. On the other hand, we are starting to believe in green hydrogen. We're looking at places near the load, logistics hubs, where we could feed in green hydrogen into gas pipelines. And this is the place where you could develop solar projects around. But in the end, it has to be in a way near consumption. And pardon me if I don't believe that Israel will ever be a world famous exporter of green hydrogen, because simply put, the country is too small to have this produced from solar. Could be blue, but it will be a technology play. And there Israel has its advantages, and there we should partner. And in Germany, if we're not too stupid, we should build clusters of green hydrogen near the load and near energy or excess energy production, like in the north where you have the excess wind. With solar, it's a little bit German solar resource. Okay, one could discuss. It's much better in Israel, and Israel will have its own green hydrogen strategy in the country, because there's not enough space from solar to build high scaling volume to export this. And I must always say that transport matters. Today we see in solar that transport prices of containers from China with modules have 20 times that more expensive than in the time before Corona. And we'll see that it's a great risk to transport too many things around the globe. So basically, we should do our homework and look at the best technology, efficient technology, cost-worthy technology, and what we can bring to the game is a high-quality solar farm, not only limited to 20 years of a lifespan, but to 40, to complement this system, to give a competitive energy. I think in the process of electrolysis, I think maybe 60% to 3/4 of the cost are energy cost. And if we take this together and get the best technology solution, to have to produce green hydrogen in the most efficient way, and not look at national arrogance. Here we are, with Siemens, and we don't look at other technologies. We should be far more open than we are today to be a part of this game, bringing technologies together. And then, again, this could be a fruitful cooperation between Israel and Germany, doing this together.
I think you just described that there are some restrictions and even some lock-ins in the German debate or in the German market. My question to you, even as the chief strategy officer of your company, where do you see the explicit potential for a cooperation between Germany and Israel in your business?
Yeah, I think it is technology, the best technology to produce green hydrogen, and then bringing together a system solution, which is more or less like a financial product, and do it simple and do it fast. Just one example from Australia, we introduced like a 50 megawatt storage system made by Tesla, to a big solar farm. It was a simple subsidy. It got a CapEx subsidy from the administration, and then this was brought by leasing the site to the local grid company, bringing together like a 7% return on equity any investor in renewables would need. And if you could bring this together and say, okay, this is kind of a project where you could invest, maybe subsidized for the beginning, that doesn't matter. In the end, it will scale and cost will go down. We are still with gray hydrogen, we are 5 times more expensive than green hydrogen. And this has to change. And this can only be brought about by initial funding, not too complicated, not too small scale, scale it up. And even start now with looking at beta sites, because you will need more or less 3 years or 5 years from permission to really build it in Germany. So start now. It's just a kind of question of speeding this up, because everybody knows that it's kind of a silver bullet in the green energy process.
Yeah, Peter, I'm really thankful for your, I think, wise words, because they just bring us on the way that it's about speed, it's about cooperation, and it's about bringing together, I think, the best assets from the German market with the industry, and also the technology base and the innovation speed from Israel. And I think you are really right that it's not just about Israel as a supplier of green hydrogen, because the country is relatively small, and we should focus on the transfer of technology and the transfer of, I think, new business models and new business cases. I think that was a beautiful story and ending word of our panel. And I would like to say thank you to Thomas, to Gil, to Gideon, and Peter. And I'm really delighted to hand over to Carsten again.
Thank you
very much. Rasmus.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to all our panelists of the second panel. I think this was kind of productive and also constructive. And thanks to Peter West, also controversial discussion, even though I didn't see many disagreements about the question if Israel could be a major supplier of green hydrogen. But for sure, Israel could also on the field of green hydrogen become a very relevant and leading technological supplier. And this is what we know from many other fields, if it's cybersecurity, if it's also space, like we discussed last week with the German Federation of Industry, about the opportunities to collaborate on those fields. And for sure, we will continue also in the energy sector, not only, but also in the area of green hydrogen. This virtual forum was the first of its kind on energy hosted by ELNET, and it was and is intended to support an intensive exchange between hydrogen and energy experts from both countries to discuss common challenges and opportunities, as well as technological and regulatory issues. I think we received some very good impressions from the regulatory side, also from the business side, and we will make sure that we have a comprehensive report compiling together the best and most relevant insights. We are very much looking forward to continue this discussion, and ending with a final remark again. Thank you very much to our chairman, Hans-Thomas Kessler, to our two keynote speakers, Dr. Stefan Kaufman and Dr. Gideon Friedman, and of course to all the panelists and to our guests on today's forum. Toda rabba, vielen Dank, thank you very much. Take care, stay healthy, and see you hopefully soon again here in Germany or in Israel. If not, then at least virtually. Thank you.